Power shovel に乗ろう
Power shovel. How'd you learn to be so cool?
Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Retro Recall the PS1 Chronicles, a show where we play and rank every PlayStation game ever created. My name is Jimmy, and as always, I'm here with Mike.
Hello.
A bit of an interesting choice this week.
Yes.
I kind of just randomly found this game. There wasn't I don't know, I just was on Reddit looking at games and I kept seeing Power Shovel and I'm like, what the hell does that even mean?
Yeah, and you gave me a list of, hey, here's 3 games we could play for next week. Pick one. And out of all 3, I was like, Power Shovel sounds amazing. Just from the title alone, and I'm just like, let's do it. In my head, I have this vision, and I cannot wait to play this game. Needless to say, whenever we got into the game, I was very surprised on what this game actually was.
I did just a tiny bit of research before I fully picked it, but it's definitely something.
Well, before we actually get into it, is there anything that you've done throughout the week?
Well, I was going to ask, what is your history with arcades and arcade machines and stuff like that? Because this is clearly an arcade game. It's actually an arcade port. And I was kind of thinking, the last time I was at an arcade that wasn't Dave & Buster's, I don't even know.
Yeah, I actually read that this was an arcade port as well. And I tried to imagine what this would be like in an arcade. What do the controls even look like on this machine to make this happen? Yeah, aside from Dave & Buster's, I couldn't tell you an exact time frame of whenever I last went to an arcade. Obviously, as a kid, they were huge. And I specifically remember, I don't know which one it is, but there's a Mortal Kombat. There's a new Mortal Kombat game. And I specifically remember me and my friends running to the arcade because that was there. And we were just playing that nonstop. That's my last memory of an official arcade, aside from Dave & Buster's, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think, weirdly enough, the arcade that I probably have the most memory of is in Kennywood.
Arcade at Kennywood. Oh, yeah.
There's 2. There's one when you first get in there, and then there's one towards the back. I mean, I haven't been there in a very, very long time, but I remember always wanting to just go play video games, and my parents are like, we're at a fucking amusement park. What are you doing?
Yeah, I was going to say, for anyone not around the Pittsburgh area, Pennsylvania, Kennywood's just the only amusement park we really have there.
It's not a bad amusement park, but it's fine.
It's decently sized, yeah. But yeah, I always have seen the arcade, and now that you bring that up, I remember as a kid, whenever I first discovered that, all I wanted to do was spend all my time in there. And again, just like you, I got yelled at and no, we're here to ride roller coasters and do stuff.
Yeah, there's one. I honestly don't even remember if they're both there still because it's been so long since I've been there. But one of them had a whole section of just retro games, which I always thought was really cool. Like Space Invaders and Pac-Man, the very old machines.
Oh.
I just thought that was so sick.
Yeah, I can't recall if I ever was even allowed to walk in there. I don't know. It sucks because even at the mall where I'm at now, there technically is an arcade, but it's just this tiny little corner of the mall. And maybe it's just perspective now, but as a kid, I felt like the arcades were much bigger in all these areas. But it could just be because we were smaller, and that's why.
I've actually never been to an actual arcade before, ever.
Oh, okay.
There was that one that was in Pittsburgh called Games and At. You ever been there?
Oh, yeah. Wait, I thought you and I went there. I was there all the time.
I was there for a show once, but I never played any of the games really.
Yeah, so I lived very close to that.
I know, that's why I brought it
Yeah,
up.
I would just walk there. I think it was $5 and you get to play unlimited games all night.
The last tour that we did, we went to this retro gaming store and in the back, they had an arcade. I didn't go because we didn't have time, but it was $20 to go in. But it had all these Japanese arcade machines. It looked so sick.
Oh, now that you bring that up, where was I? Oh man, you made me realize it may have been whenever I was in California once, but I was with someone and we went to this arcade bar, just like you were talking about. And I just remember this entire building, I think it was 3 stories tall, being arcade machines, just filled with people, and you could just play.
That sounds so sick.
So that must have been the last time. I completely forgot about that memory until you just mentioned that.
Core memory unlocked.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can't say that if I saw this game in an arcade that I would be drawn to it, but you never know.
I probably wouldn't have, child me was always into the fighting games. Oddly enough, because I don't like them now.
Yeah, I know, right?
But it depends on how the arcade cabinet actually looked. We'll get into this more, but with how this game is, if they went crazy with the arcade cabinet, I could see this being intriguing enough for being like, oh, what is this game? I want to go play it.
So if you look in the Discord message, by the way, what I sent you is the custom PlayStation controller that they made for this game in Japan. And this is emulating the arcade cabinet, apparently.
Oh, okay. Well, then if this is what the cabinet looked like, I think I would be intrigued because this is very interesting. I would imagine it's almost lifelike.
Imagine if you go in there and like you're just sitting in like an actual machine.
Oh, that'd be great. It's like those bike racing games where you're actually on a motorcycle.
Oh, I love them, especially like Arctic Thunder and stuff like that where you're sitting on it. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're already getting into Power Shovel. Let's just hop into this game. Power Shovel was released on September 21st, 2000 in North America. Developed by Taito and published by Acclaim. You know, it's a port of an arcade game. It's a Power Shovel simulator arcade game. The game was released at only $20, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that's very cheap for the time. But I mean, given what content there is, it makes sense.
It almost impacts my, we don't have to go far with this yet, but it almost impacts my rating knowing that they priced it so low. You know, you tend to give a game a little more leeway with the content if it's priced accordingly, even now.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like they knew what they were putting out, and so they priced it accordingly. So I guess we can start with my initial thoughts of what I thought this game was going to be.
Yeah, I'm curious.
In my head, I'm picturing, okay, Power Shovel. It's a first-person game where you have a shovel and you're running around a level, hitting people and like killing them. It just seems wacky. It seems out of nowhere. So it's like a Doom-like with a shovel.
I feel like a game probably exists like that on Steam right now.
Probably. It wouldn't surprise me at all. So whenever we get into the game and I see a giant excavator, I was way off on my thoughts of this game.
So what were your like initial thoughts when first jumping in? Because this, even as soon as you start, it's a lot.
Yeah, so the very first thing you see when you're loading up the game is that memory card dialog box. And just the way it looks and the way the text is, I just was like, oh God, what did we get into on this one? And then right after that, you're starting to get yelled at by a Japanese guy immediately.
I love it. I love it so much.
And so it went from like an oh God to laughing because I'm like, okay, I already get where this is going.
They're just screaming at you the entire time you're playing this game. No matter what you do, if it's good or bad, they're just screaming. I love it so much. It's so dumb.
The best way to put this is it's MXC. Do you remember that show?
Oh, I do.
It's like MXC meets an excavator simulator is pretty much what this game is.
Yeah, my first impression was just like, I love this weird idea. Like, who thought of this? And it's like endorsed by the company that actually makes these things in real life.
Which is the greatest fact about that. Of like, this company was just on board with this crazy idea from the start. And I don't think many companies would get behind that.
No, they wouldn't. And that's what makes it so interesting. It's like, how did this happen? You know?
Yeah. What was the pitch meeting like? How did they even get the sign off on it? And we usually talk about story first. There is no story. You just drive an excavator. That is the game.
Yeah, it's an arcade game. So like there's not really like a narrative to it. You're just driving the power shovel.
Yeah. And even the menus are like they make no sense of what each menu option does.
I know. It's just so stupid.
It's like feel the power shovel, see it, or something like that.
So what did you do first when you started playing?
The very first thing I did, aside from looking at all the options and controls and whatnot, I went to the beginner, I guess, tutorial levels is what you'd call them.
The license test or like the...
It's in arcade mode, yeah.
Okay.
And it's not the mini games.
Oh, okay. I actually did the license test first because I thought that was a tutorial.
Oh, you just went right to hard mode.
It kind of is. Like, it still teaches you how to do things, but
yeah,
it is very hard and I never beat it.
No, Well, yeah, we can get into that. Where did you end up stopping for the licensing test?
Digging a deep hole.
Yes. Thank you. That same here. I feel like, and this is like with every single game mode, and even in the licensing test, they just give you like just a smidge more seconds needed than what it actually takes to complete it. So for the digging the deep hole, I either finished digging the hole and the time was at 0 already, so I had no time to go back, or the time ran out and I was still trying to dig the hole. It just wasn't registering that I was digging.
So I think what you have to do is like have it angled straight down, then you get into the sand, then you curve it, then you pull back so you can keep digging deeper.
Oh, that would make sense.
So it's not that it's not registering it, it's that you're not like positioning it exactly the way the game wants you to, which is still annoying, and I still never beat it. But like it makes sense why it would be like that, because you're trying to dig straight down.
Yeah, I get that.
But yeah, I mean, before we even keep going here, we got to talk about these controls because they're just they're just completely out of control.
You think so?
I kept messing it up to the end here. Like I played another half an hour today before we started. I spent 20 minutes trying to dig a deep hole again. Still didn't beat it.
Yeah.
But even to the very end, I still would hit the wrong button.
Yeah. It was one of those things of the more you played, it started to become natural, but you never fully grasped which button did what, at least in my case.
No, I agree. It's like you hit the wrong one, then you're like, oh yeah, it's this. But you never did it naturally. And I think part of that too is there's just not a lot of content in this. So by the time you've beaten almost everything besides the really hard stuff, and obviously you can crank up the difficulty and there's like an extra time trial mode. But when you've done all the main stuff, which I did, I don't feel like I have a firm grasp on this game still.
I wish there was a way that they let you remap the controls to make more sense in your brain, because the fact of like X made your arm go up, but triangle made your arm go down.
I messed that up so many times.
Yeah, because naturally you'd want that switched where X was down, triangle was up. I think that was my biggest part of that, was confusing me the most of the controls.
No, I mean, I completely agree. And like, obviously, like the driving with like the triggers feels a little weird, but most of the time you just got to get where you're going, then you're done. Besides like the one mini game where you have to drive around, there's really not that much of a reason to have to get good at that.
And it took so much thinking on my end whenever I was doing the driving. I'm like, okay, here comes the left-hand turn. Which finger do I need to release to turn? Because it's counterintuitive to the one you want to turn.
Seriously, you're like thinking right now, like, what do I do? What do I do? Then you hit the wrong thing and you fall off or something.
Yeah, and to describe that more to people, you use the two triggers. Left trigger controls your left track, right trigger controls your right track. So when you want to turn, you let go of the left track to turn left, and you have to let go of the right track to turn right.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, and then the triggers actually make them go backwards, so you can spin in a complete circle if you have one going forward and one going backwards. But it just feels unnatural. I understand how it works, but it never felt right to me to have to turn.
I feel like if I put another hour and a half, because I put an hour and a half into this total, maybe a little more, like an hour and a half to 2 hours, somewhere in there. I feel like if I had another hour, I would have really nailed it down. But there really wasn't that much more to do other than replaying things and doing the hard challenges.
Yeah, I think in general, it took me about 20 minutes to beat all the mini games, roughly 20, 25 minutes. And then after that, it was just doing the test. And that's really all I had left to do at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest problem with this game, is that there's just not enough content. And like, I go back and forth on whether that impacts how I feel about it or not. Knowing it was a cheaper game when it came out, even now, like, it still feels like it's missing a lot. I feel like there should be a whole nother page of mini games.
Yeah, because they have those, 3 empty spaces in the bottom?
You can buy those in the store.
Oh, okay. I never tried to buy stuff.
Yeah, after you beat like a round of arcade mode, you get money, and then you can use that money to buy there's photos, there's music, there's like different announcers, I think, or different lines or something.
Different background animations.
Yeah. And there's a few more mini games.
Oh, okay.
I bought one and I played it and I filmed it today, so you could show that. It's the one that I got was you are hitting a ball into a bunch of like dolls. So the dolls, it's like those like they look like those like Russian nesting dolls kind of things. Like they're stood up like bowling pins kind of. And they're up and you have to like swing on the ball with like the end of the excavator, but you have to like move it up at the last second to like swing it up.
To put like spin on the ball.
It's very strange. Luckily, I mean, and I don't know how much of this is impacted by the difficulty mode, but I only had to hit 2 of them, which was still very hard, but doable.
Well, since we're getting into that, there's a specific section within the arcade mode called comical minigames. And I was very confused on what that even meant. And they couldn't have described those minigames any better than comical minigames.
That is the best part of the game.
Yes.
Like full stop. Yeah, like I wish they had like 20 more of those.
Yep. It's like some examples. One of my favorites, and made me laugh so hard, was your curry server. And you have to put curry onto a plate as it comes up. And just the idea of this giant excavator serving curry was hilarious to me.
I like that one the most. And then the one where you're like trying to do math with it.
Yes. Yeah. I was confused by that one at first, though.
I know, because it doesn't make any sense. What does this even mean? Like, you look at it, you're like, okay, but it gives you a bunch of numbers around you, and you have to push the button, and it gives you a total. So, like, the numbers around you, it'll be like 1, 5, 10, 15, whatever, and you have to hit the buttons with your thing to add up to the number on the screen. And it's really easy, but it's just so strange.
Yeah. We always talk about how we wish games would go all in on an idea, and this game does it. This is what we've been talking about this entire time. This game just is like, we're going in on this, and we don't care what it is. We're just, here's all these crazy, wacky games that you can play.
No, I mean, that's what it is, and I love it for that.
But for as funny and wacky as those mini games are, it's also stressful sometimes. Like with the saving the turtles, where it's like you're just stressing trying to catch a turtle to save it.
You literally just have to pick these turtles up and move them to another little pool. But it's so stressful.
Yeah. And again, with the timing is like, there were times with some of the, either in the tutorials or mini games, where I was completing them with like 1 to 2 seconds left. And there was even one I completed with 0 seconds left because I just happened to get that little bit I needed just at the very end.
I really liked the ones that kind of change the way you think about things, where like, you know, you're driving and you can get shocked and you can fall off. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
And then the one where you're controlling just the end of the crane and you're kind of going through a little like gauntlet. It's like super weird. Like,
and the gauntlet changes. Did you notice that?
No.
So the first time I failed, because I spent too much time, I didn't realize you couldn't touch the walls or anything. So I failed. And then when I did it a second time, it was a completely different map than the first one. So it's constantly changing.
I did it twice and it didn't change. That's really cool.
Oh, weird.
I mean, I did it like, and then I got back in the game another day and it was the same thing again. So I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I did find it a little weird that for some of them, you're in like first person mode.
Mm-hmm. Just so you can see the bucket a little bit better.
It's just a little disorienting and you have to like rethink the way you're controlling in a way. You know what I mean?
Apparently, you can hit the select button and it changes your camera.
Well, all right.
I forget where I saw that at. It may have been in the controls menu. I never did it up until the very final one with the digging a deep hole. That was pretty much the last thing I did. When I pulled up, I'm like, well, I can't see shit. So I had to change the camera to be that perspective so I can see what I was doing.
That would have helped me a lot. I wish I knew that.
Yeah. Well, there were times where you had to like pull up to somewhere and then you had to back into your spot. And I kept running over cones because I didn't know where I was going. So I wonder if there was a camera angle to see behind you that I never just clicked on.
Also, I think the graphics are really good in this game.
Surprisingly, there's nothing wrong with the game. It's smooth. There's no glitches. The game looks nice. The music just as weird as the gameplay.
I love the music, honestly.
Yeah, like that one song where like the guy's yelling in the beginning and it goes into that like punkish song.
Yeah, it's like almost ska or something.
Yeah, I was like, I just want to listen to the soundtrack just to actually hear these sounds without the actual mechanical sounds going on at the same time. So whenever you go into the arcade mode, there's that third option.
So that's what I was talking about earlier. That's the time trials mode.
Oh, that's time trials. Okay.
you can buy it in the shop, and it's like a lot of points. It's like enough that like you'd have to grind for it, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay. It was one of those things where I thought maybe when you get your license, it opens up. Like, oh, you got your license, now you can do this extra mode type thing.
No, you just have to buy it. But did you beat the other arcade mode, like the quote unquote tutorial one?
Oh, yeah, the beginner one? Yeah, I beat that one.
For some reason, I could not beat the one where you have to dig a long hole.
Pretty much the same one that you failed on with the licensing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will admit I was stressing at the very last seconds, and that may be the one that I beat on 0 seconds left.
Well, I kept like hitting things in the hole, and it would say, you can't dig here.
Oh, that's interesting. I never had that problem.
I think it was, you would hit it, and then it would come up with like water. So it's like, hinting at you're hitting like a water main or something.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing in the game.
That's the only time it happened to me, but I never beat that one because of it.
Oh.
You have to dig like a however long hole.
Yeah. And it's like those safety zones on the both sides of you.
Yeah.
It was stressful, to say the least. Especially when you're trying to get the controls down in the first place. And you're constantly hitting the wrong button and like your shovel's going all over the place. And you're like, I just need to hurry up and dump this sand so I can keep digging.
I know, you spill a little sand, they scream at you. You bump the truck, they scream at you.
But with a shop too, so if you fail a mission, you have to use a continue. I thought it was really cool how you can just go into the shop and buy more continues. It's kind of like the transactions of today, but back then.
I also like that in the license test, you can do it as many times as you want to. The continues don't apply.
Yeah, it was very nice we get that this is difficult. So just keep trying as much as you want.
It's also worth saying that with us talking about how difficult this is, I played on the easiest difficulty. I assume you did too.
Not the easiest. I played on easy.
I cranked it all the way down as low as I could, and I still couldn't get anywhere.
Okay, well, that's good to know because I was going to ask if you went down to the easiest mode, does that actually give you more time? But it apparently not.
It might, but not by a lot. Like not by so much that it made it that much easier for me. Considering we both stopped at the same point in license test, that to me says no matter what you do, there's not going to be enough time.
Yeah. Because with the licensing test, you get demerits. And the demerits are whenever you hit a cone or if you hit the truck, like you were talking about. And that impacts your score at the end. So when you're trying to be careful and not run things over, but you also need to be precise and quick, you're fighting those two elements and it doesn't really work out well for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that this game kind of banks on is you being overwhelmed. And it works.
Yeah, it does fully. They do have extra excavators that you can look at, but how do you buy them?
I have no idea. I mean, there was a couple where you play as a different one, but I didn't know that you could actually change it.
I don't know. Because did you go to that option to look at them?
I did in the very beginning, but I didn't really do anything with it.
Okay, yeah. So it's like, oh, here's a preview. I was like, cool. But how do I buy this thing if I wanted to? I couldn't figure it out.
So they're just like 3D models of these things?
Yeah. It's like a small, medium, and large excavator.
The game's like, hey, check this shit out.
Yeah. And that makes me wonder, like, if you buy the large excavator, is that now like more difficult for these smaller courses that you have to do things on? Or are those models changing in the mini games? I wish we could have figured that out to see what happens.
That would be interesting if it worked that way, because then you would have to really think about the choices that you make. But I honestly don't think this game is that deep, you know?
Right. It's just, here's this wacky thing and have fun and laugh at the comical side of it. But I don't like how they time you on literally everything. You get timed in the menus. You get timed when you're trying to pick a mini game to play. You get timed in the game itself. It's like nonstop timers the entire time you're playing.
The timers in the menus makes absolutely no sense to me. I don't know why you would put that in when it's not in the arcade, but they could have just left it because, like, why not? I mean, fighting games do that too, like Tekken and everything. Like when you're picking your fighter, there's a timer for no reason, you know?
Yeah. It goes back to when we talked about, I think it was Tekken, where it wouldn't be that difficult to remove those restrictions. I get it in an arcade. They want to hurry you up, rush, come on, you need to play the game. That's something that's very easy to just remove when it comes over to a console.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I just don't understand why you would leave it in for any real circumstance. Like, I can't imagine any game where you would need that, but at the end of the day, it's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah. For the mini games, with the one where you have to knock over sheds, how many attempts did that take for you to do?
1.
Oh, you got it in 1. Wow. I think it took me 3 tries to get that done.
I would literally just hold my thing all the way forward, just start driving, then just kind of go back and forth and just push everything over. For the first few, it took me a second, but then, once you get to the last few, you're like, oh, okay, this is easy. I got this.
That was the technique I did at the end to finally beat it. You just poke over the walls and then knock them over side to side.
One of the ones I almost didn't beat was the one where you have to smash the car.
I was just about to bring that one up because I was panicking at the very last seconds.
I did the exact same thing. I got to like 92% or something like that. And then I'm like, where is the part that I have to hit to trigger this right now?
What they don't tell you is that it's broken up into 3 sections that you need to blow up all 3 sections. You figure it out eventually. But yeah, there's no clear indication of, hey, this one little spot is where you need to hit next. So you're just like slamming down onto this car like it's a Street Fighter minigame, just trying to destroy it.
I was just slamming on every part. I'm like, where is it? Where's the part that I have to hit?
And I bet too, it was just like what we were talking about. You probably beat that in 2 seconds remaining?
Not that low, but it was definitely low.
Oh, okay. I just feel like with every single game mode, I was just constant stress. And it didn't really need to be that much stress.
But I kind of, at the same time, I kind of like it because it's just overwhelming and it's an onslaught of just everything. Like, you're trying to learn how to use these controls. You're trying to figure out what the game wants from you. They're screaming at you. There's a timer. Like, it's just all this stuff going at once that just creates this crazy feeling when you're playing.
Yeah. And even whenever you do like a mini game, the little mascot guy who's the one who's yelling at you is like, oh, not bad. You can do better next time. I'm like, I literally did the thing you told me I should do. Like, what could I do better?
Yeah, like, what more do you want from me?
It's like they just expect so much out of you this entire game.
I can't imagine like doing a time trial on the hardest difficulty. It's probably ridiculous.
Oh, 100%. Just the time trials, like with that one maze that you were talking about where you had to drive.
Yeah.
That was enough of a time trial for me where I was already like hyper focused and just so worried about every movement I was doing. Being timed for other stuff like that, and just no thank you.
I honestly thought it was fun.
For what?
The maze one? Like, I was having a good time, even though it was like a little stressful. It was still like, I don't know. I think just the absurdity of it all just really gets to me in a good way.
Oh, yeah. There's never a negative of like the absurdity of it. So we keep talking about how there wasn't enough content. You get through the minigames pretty fast. It would have been nice if they had like, oh, here's like these super extreme wacky ones, but also here's like some kind of normal ones at the same time. So kind of you're balancing out more, giving you more things to play aside from just the super crazy ones.
Yeah, and even if it was still more crazy ones, like it's just missing a lot of content. And like a game like this wouldn't fly today with how much is in it. You know what I mean?
I know I was pretty much through everything within a half hour. And I can't think of a game a game nowadays that has that low of a runtime.
No, even cheap games or like mobile games, they still all have more than this. And that's the weird part.
It makes me wonder about like how much limitation did they actually have with this game, or how quickly was there a deadline that they just had to hit, and so they just had to put out whatever they could finish. That's the only logical thing I could think of, because the amount of things you could do with this is unlimited.
I mean, they could literally have like a WarioWare style game like this, and I would play the shit out of it.
Exactly. If you have a minigame where you're serving curry with an excavator, you can do anything. You already went crazy, go even crazier. Like, you already don't care about the boundaries. Just keep going with that.
I can imagine a sequel would have been crazy and like absolutely nuts. Like, imagine a game like this with a story mode or something.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of expecting of. Maybe if you get through these trials, maybe if you get through the testing, maybe that all unlocks a story of some sort of, I don't know, what would a story even be? You have to go to different job sites to complete them, I guess.
You're just an excavator on a journey trying to make as much money as possible and level up the ranks or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And with that, you can get crazy. Like, it starts off normal, but then weird things you have to do here and there.
I think just the bottom line of this game, though, is it's really fun. The ideas are cool. It's fun to laugh at it. But at the end of the day, like it's a half an hour of gameplay, maybe an hour.
Yeah. So the fact that you played 1.5 hours to almost 2 hours is impressive. I guess it's just trying to get through the testing, I guess.
Pretty much. I mean, I played through all the silly ones again today just because I wanted to do it again. But I've done it twice now, and I have no desire to do it a third time.
Yeah. It makes me wonder of if you had this as a kid, you'd finish the game in a day, and then would it just sit on your shelf until down the road you're like, oh, I want to play that again, and then you just come back to it?
I guess. Or, I mean, you would just grind away at it to try and beat the stuff you can never beat.
True. Try to get more proficient at it.
I don't think I would have liked this game as a kid, honestly. It's a little too much.
Oh, yeah. As a kid, I probably wouldn't have liked this at all. I can appreciate it now, being grown up. But back then, I probably would have been bored really quickly just because I wouldn't understand what I was supposed to do, or like, oh, this isn't a fun game. This isn't what a game should be, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're at the point where we're kind of getting into that, repeating ourselves a whole bunch here. So do you have any more notes that we didn't go through?
We got through my notes very quickly, so I'm completely out.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've been out of notes for a while now. Well, let's just go ahead and hop into some reviews. It was very hard to find English reviews for this.
I can imagine.
I went on to Moby Games, which is where I got some of the more harder to find reviews from previous episodes. And most of the reviews were pretty okay. They were mixed. Like, nothing amazing, nothing bad. Game Shark gave it a 6.2 out of 10. And they said, the control setup in Power Shovel is unique, but after a few hours are logged in, it becomes natural. However, when one takes a break and returns to play later, one might find themselves having to learn the system all over again. Happened to me. I played it 3 separate days. Each time I was like, fuck.
And that just goes back, I wish we could remap the controls. And that's it.
I mean, I guess technically you could do it like in the emulator if you wanted to.
Yeah, but then I'd forget and then it'd be all screwed up.
You forget and then you go to play it in the next game and you're like, what's going on?
It's a 1 out of 10. I couldn't even play this game.
Yeah, the controls wouldn't work for some reason. And then I've never heard of this one, but you know, it was there. You can look it up. Game Critics gave it a 6.5 out of 10. And here's what they said. While the control scheme is extremely difficult to come to grips with initially, the real problem here is the intense time limits placed on the player. In my entire gaming history, there have been less than a handful of games that I wasn't able to overcome. Power Shovel was nearly added to that list due to the fill the long hole on the license exam. I never got there, but I suppose that if I devoted a larger portion of my life to it and trained like I was entering the Olympics, I'd be approaching the level of proficiency required to rank higher or score the really big money on the advanced difficulty levels. And this was your big complaint.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see that someone else, aside from us who couldn't do the fill the long hole training piece.
I never even got to fill the long hole. I failed on dig the long hole.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe that's the one he was talking about.
I think fill the long hole is after where we stopped.
Oh, okay. Well, then I guess it just gets more difficult if we were to succeed on that one.
I honestly do feel like if I really tried and just, like he's saying, dedicated my life to it, I definitely could get better at this. But it's not really worth it because there's nothing else after you beat that. So let's say I grinded away and tried to get better at the license test. I beat it. And then it's like, okay, I've beaten literally everything in the game now.
Yep. And it's one of those things that, and you brought this up earlier, with the lack of content, it makes it hard to be practicing. And the only way is just to keep doing the same game modes over and over again.
Before we get to our scores, I did want to say this game has a level editor. Did you mess with that at all?
No, I meant to, but I completely forgot to get to it because I was so focused on trying to beat that damn dig a deep hole.
The exact same thing happened to me. I was planning on just like messing around with it for 10 minutes or something, but typically for me in any game, when it's like create something or like build this, I don't ever do it.
At least back in this time period, I do remember some games way back when with a level editor. It's never extraordinary. It's all basically the same stuff every time.
I would imagine they probably give you like, you probably can't create anything like the wacky levels, but it probably just gives you everything you can do in the license test and like the arcade mode. And then you can kind of create a little level for yourself. It's probably no more than like, oh, you can make yourself drive farther and then dig the hole or move the sand. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just, where do you want the sand pile? Where do you want the truck? Stuff like that.
At the end of the day, it's cool that it's there, but like I personally, even as a kid, would have never messed with it anyway.
Well, I can kind of disagree on that one. as a kid, I always loved to go into the level editors, even though there was never much. Nowadays, I wouldn't have with these games, but as a kid, you're like, I get to make my own level in a video game? That's really cool.
All right. So here's the interesting part. I had a hard time figuring out where to put this game.
Yeah, me too.
I have no idea where you're going to sit on this. I mean, we kind of feel similarly about it, but I really like this game. I think it's cool. I think it's a great idea. It's got a lack of content, that's for sure. You know, we've brought up all these points already, but I think they really swung for the fences with this weird concept, and I just love it. I really love the wacky mini games. I think that really takes it over the top for me. So I don't want to give it too crazy of a score because it is still what it is. And, you know, also it being a budget game, I think that helps it. I'm going to go with a 7.5.
Whoa. That is so much higher than I was expecting you to go.
I think it's fun. And like, it's just so silly. It's also very intense. It's got its own thing going on. And it really went for it. And I think it should be rewarded for that.
Interesting. All right. So for me, as always, initially starting the game, I pretty much started it at a 6.5. Like you said, they swung for the fences. They went crazy with it. No limitations. But due to the lack of levels and whatnot, it kind of takes me back to Destruction Derby. How pretty solid game, but just lack of levels, lack of stuff to do. So I did bring it down a little bit, and I was going to go with a 6, just because I feel like that half point needs to be taken off because you could have done more with the levels.
I hear you. I mean, what's there is just awesome and fun. It's just there's not a lot. And I think comparing to Destruction Derby, whereas Destruction Derby has like almost nothing.
Yeah. It just follows the same concept of a short game with nothing more to do after that.
Yeah. I know. I hear you. I'm gonna stick with a 7.5 because I just think it's a really interesting concept. I think it's a fun game. And if it had a lot more content, I would have probably went like an 8, I think.
Oh, yeah. If there was more content, I'd be up there with you with a 7.5 or 8, just because they gave us that. But I don't see it being that high. And that's why I kind of ranked it around a 6, because I gave it Destruction Derby 5.5. I'm like, well, this is clearly a lot better than Destruction Derby. So I felt a 6 was reasonable.
Yeah, and I was looking at my scores for the same reason. And I'm looking like I gave Kula World a 7.5. I kind of feel the same thing as this game where like they both have a concept that they just go all in on. You know, Kula World obviously has way more content, but I feel similarly as I do to that.
Well, this does put us at a predicament yet again. And it's going to be probably every week now that we start falling into this, but
I love it.
So we're looking at Tekken and Hot Shot Golf, both at 6.75.
I would personally put this above those two.
I was on the same page. There's no argument here.
Okay.
It's as limiting as both of those games, but provides so much more entertainment overall.
Those two games are just a little more like in a lane, right? Like golf, fighting, like they are what they are. There's a bunch of other games like that. I've never played anything like this, and I doubt I ever will again.
A way to also say it is those two are like safe games. It's like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to, like you said, stay in our lane. And this game could have did that. And they decided, we don't care about lanes. We're going all over the place.
This game is anything but safe.
Exactly.
All right. So that puts it at what? Number 6. Wow. I mean, this list is getting pretty populated. I mean, we got 17 now.
And so far we have now something at the very top in the 8s. We're still not at the 9s yet. And we have something down towards the bottom at the 3s. So we still have a big gap of the list to fill out.
That's true. But so far, I think we've been doing pretty good of a nice wide range of scores. It's not like in the beginning, I was a little scared because there was a lot of games that were in the 5 to 6. And I'm like, are we just going to stay here forever?
Yeah. I think it's just our picking of the games in the beginning. But now we're starting to spread out. We're starting to get into the weird stuff and the abnormal.
I mean, I love it because like the top 6 games are games that I had never played before this show.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
Whereas like games that I know, like I know Crash, I know Hot Shots, I know Tekken, I knew of Destruction Derby, like some of these other ones too, Tomb Raider, like the ones that I knew are even lower. Like there's no nostalgia goggles here.
We are destroying the nostalgia goggles once and for all.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you enjoyed this, Please remember to like and subscribe, as well as give us a rating on podcast services. We'll see you next week.